And now I can't get into the van. I can't use the brakes. And even if I got in, I probably wouldn't be able to steer the goddamn thing anyway.
Oh, my God.
So I always, and I'm being, literally, Judy, I'm being dragged along on the pavement by this van. And it's in a suburban area of Berkeley, very nice area, nice homes. And I just say to myself, you got to let go of the van.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't hold on to the van anymore. That van's history. I let go of the van, and I see the van flying down the street with my dog in the van. And I'm just like, I don't know where this is going, but there's nothing I can do about it, right? And all of a sudden, the van slams into this Honda, a nice Honda. And the Honda was parked next to a sign, a big metal sign on the pole telling you what time you could park there, when the street cleaning was coming, one of those signs in the sidewalk. My van slams into this Honda, T-bones this Honda, and smashes the Honda up against this big metal pole. So the Honda's accordioned. And my van stops. My dog jumps out of the van. Her alarm goes off. The people, this is where it gets very funny. The people who own the house that was right by the Honda, the lights go on in their house. Their door opens. My dog jumps out of the window of the van, runs into the house. Like, could you imagine those people?
No.
All of a sudden they hear they hear like a bomb going off. They open the door, and this dog comes running into their house, right? So, I come walking down the street. My leg is bloody. Oh, my gosh, shit,
How are you going to explain this?
Well, yeah, so now what happens, this woman who owns the car, she comes walking down the street. She's this, Asian woman. I think she was Japanese. She turns, white as a ghost because her car has just been demolished, right? And she says, oh, my God, my father just passed away. He just gave me that car.
Oh.
I'm like, so here's the weird part, right? So now the towing service comes, and they pull my van off her car. Cops come, they look, everything's cool. I got my license, I got insurance, everything's kosher. They put my car on the truck, and they actually got into her car, and they were able to open her door and start her car and drive her car off that sign. Everything about her car was fine. Like her engine worked, all the mechanical parts were fine. It was just these two doors. And I actually wound up driving back a couple months later, and I saw the same car. She'd had the doors fixed. So ultimately, everything kind of worked out for her. It was probably an inconvenience, and I'm sorry to that woman. But the reason why I'm telling you this story is because I feel like we're that van right now.
Right.
We just have to let go, and we don't know what's going to happen.
And trust in the outcome.
Yeah.
Trust in a good outcome. Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing I could do,
Yeah.
And my life was a little inconvenient, but it wasn't terribly inconvenient. Guess what? I had another car to drive the next day, and I drove that car for a good 3 to 4 years after that. So it all worked out. It all worked out fine. It's funny story, Judy. I know that I'm not going to get that van back. Because it was total in the front.
There's a time when you just have to let go.
Yeah, and I'm with the guy who's taking the van away to basically, salvage it or whatever. Even though we hadn't talked about it, I said, yeah, man, where are you going to take it to? Well, I'm going to take it to this mechanic. Oh, great. Can you just give me a ride back to my house on the way? It's like, okay. So sure, let me just get a few things out of that van.
Your life was in that van.
Exactly. So, I took about 5 minutes. I'm shuffling all this stuff out of the van, and that was it. That was the last I ever saw the van. And it was a great, great sturdy van. It gave me a lot of great adventures. But look, we got to let go sometimes. And as much as I like George and the information that he shares, I also believe that's not. I mean, look. Could it all go down like that? Sure, it could. Could it all be that hopeless? Yes, it could. But I just think that there is a level of awareness and kind of a radical nature to consciousness that can't always be accounted for. And that's the layer of faith that I work with in my own life.
I completely agree, because we can see all of these things happening that he was talking about, but like you said, the outcome does not. The outcome is always very surprising, because spirit works in strange ways.
I agree with you, and you just never know when you need these little, like for instance, I talked about this story the other day on the show. There was this old boy who was underwater in a pool for half an hour, and he lived.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Half an hour. And there was a model, this woman, she was a model. She got hit by the propeller of a plane. This was all within the last, 72 hours.
I read something about that.
Yeah.
And she survived it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, we can't, as much as we'd like to believe that it's written in the Georgia Guidestones, right? Like written in stone, like the Georgia Guides. I don't think it always gets played out like that, No. Like I knew this guy. I studied. He was like a kind of a what we would call a Wasatchu shaman, right? He was a white shaman. He studied the native way. Good guy, and he got involved in Native American medicine and practice because he went through a trauma, and the trauma he went through that he was in the Vietnam War, and he told me this story which really shook the core and the foundation of his life. He was a helicopter pilot, and they were like airvacs. So he'd come in, guys would get down, they'd take him out, and they had to be very careful because sometimes the Viet Cong would ambush them. And he said he had this one experience where he came in and he flew in to get these guys, and he could see their faces. They were reaching their hands up, trying to, they were wounded, and the Viet Cong were laying in wait. And they were using them as bait to get the helicopters, right? And he said, I'll never forget this. So first, there were two things that happened. One is the Viet Cong fired on me at point blank range with a automatic rifle, and he said not one bullet hit the helicopter. And he said it was completely unexplainable. And the other thing that happened was that I had to fly out of there. And I'll never forget the look in that man's face.
And man.
So this is what. So he was he had to deal with the mystery of why he survived, and the tragedy of why the other guy didn't. So the reason I brought that up is because these anomalies happen, and I'm a big proponent of creative chaos in these anomalies. Now that doesn't mean that we're not going to be staring down some heavy stuff, but I just don't think.
Oh no.
Things are written as etched in stone as deeply as they are.
Exactly. I kind of perceive different realities as chords and pathways, and there's millions of them that you could take, and you don't always have to. I'll say, well, hey, I'm not going to go down that pathway. It's not going to happen, and it doesn't. That may be just considered wishful thinking, but in my mind's eye, that's how I perceive these things.
Well, Judy, what's interesting is that Jerry Hicks of Jerry and Esther Hicks just passed away, right? He just died.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he died about a week ago, and and I was into the Abraham stuff for a little bit. Not I wasn't an Abraham freak. But
no, me either. I've heard some of it, but no.
but one of the things that always made sense to me with Abraham in the material was they had this thing called forking off, right? That you would just you would just go to what felt good to you, right? And you would just I
thought I came up with that.
So let's go back to your original question, right? So the 11-11-11 stuff, right? So here's my take on it. My take on it is that since 11-11-11, it is easier for people to fork off, right? I mean, they can go to things inside themselves which simply feel good, and not good in an escapist sense, but in kind of a deep, rich, resonant sense. And they don't have, there's not a lot of mind talk, there's not a lot of patterning that is getting in the way. So I think it's getting easier for people to say yes to things that feel really rich and resonant and rewarding inside themselves. And that's everything from relationships to lifestyle to whatever. I think that's where we are.
That is a beautiful way to put it. Absolutely beautiful.